Welcome to the Startup Grind.
That, of course, makes me nervous, right?
Okay.
People standing up for me. It's good enough for you to come in the first place.
So, thank you for coming.
You're most welcome. It's my pleasure.
Excited to. Do we need speakers that everybody hears?
They want to close.
Yeah. I can turn it. Okay, thank you. Yeah, so I usually ask, I have one event, but what usually other startup grant directors ask is, what is your first entrepreneurial experience? But in one interview I saw in our research, of course, before. So I saw that you said that you're not entrepreneur. You don't consider yourself entrepreneur. And you actually said, I don't consider myself an entrepreneur. My dad inherited a company, but he wasn't an entrepreneur. He suffered from it, and if the dad suffers, the family suffers. I know what it takes and how tough it is if you fail. So if you're not an entrepreneur, who are you? And how would you define it?
Okay, so let me let me go back to that answer. So I grew up with gaining huge respect and also a view on entrepreneurship. And the view on entrepreneurship that I gained over the years is that it's not for everybody. I mean, we may all want to be entrepreneurs, but it is, at the end of the day, it's not for everybody. And those who are entrepreneurs and pull it off, I have this immense respect, because it's not easy to be an entrepreneur. My dad inherited the company. He was basically an entrepreneur contracteur, and it was all fine. He inherited it from my granddad, his father-in-law. And while my granddad was still alive, it was fine, and all went good. Granddad died. I think I was 6. My father was in his late 30s, and from the one to the other day, he changed. Fear got the better half of him, and fear in entrepreneurship is, I think, a given. There's no entrepreneurship without fear. Like, you cannot race a car and have no fear. If that's the case, then you'll die, because you're going to be a reckless driver, and there are no reckless Formula One drivers because they're selected out of that profession, either naturally or by committees. The thing, and I've seen that later on, working with entrepreneurs through the venture capital companies that I work with. I think entrepreneurs are being formed in those instances where they are confronted with this idea: how the hell am I gonna meet the next payroll? And overcoming that, and not being paralyzed by that, but just being on the top of your toes and figuring it out, and solving it, figuring it out, not being paralyzed, that's when entrepreneurs become real entrepreneurs, in my view. So what is, I mean, there's libraries full of books about entrepreneurship and definitions about it. I take a very simple, I'm a simple guy, a very simple approach. An entrepreneur is someone who manages and finances the same company, his company. And it's that combination at the same time, which I think is kind of the holy grail of entrepreneurship. It brings the fire, the anxiety, the excitement, and the passion. I don't consider myself an entrepreneur because I've never been as an entrepreneur with my own company. at the point that I had to worry about the next payroll because I didn't have a payroll. It's very simple, and I don't want a payroll exactly because of this. Right? So I don't consider myself an entrepreneur. I'm a consultant, and yes, I have my own little company, but I don't work with other people's money. That's the other thing. I mean, it's as long as you work with your own money, it isn't that difficult. Yes, you may lose it. It's your money. That's not nice. But if you lose your own money and someone else's money, it's going to be hard. And that notion and that awareness and dealing with it in a positive way, that creates, I think, the extra that makes an entrepreneur a real good entrepreneur.
So you think that what drives entrepreneurs, the fear of losing, or
No.
So what causes them to be that innovative and?
I think that part is. I think what drives an entrepreneur is the urge of accomplishment. I think entrepreneurs and guys here in the room, they start a company because they feel this need, this urge to bring an idea to reality and accomplish something. And if you want, leave a mark on the earth by that. Then the rest happens. Yeah? There's this wonderful line in a Mary Chapin Carpenter song, and it says, accidents and inspiration lead you to your destination. And I think that's what entrepreneurship is about.
So you think you don't only have to born as an entrepreneur, there are also stages during your career as an entrepreneur where you become even more entrepreneurial. So like you said, when you have to pay and overcome that payroll issue, you become even more
that's when I think when you grow into entrepreneurial maturity, overcoming the problems, and get out of the problems stronger than before.
And after people go through your workshop, they are definitely stronger because you keep the hell out of it.
Oh, it's not that bad, guys, is it? I don't know. We're not. Well, Chris is here.
It's all my fault.
That's all your fault. No, the thing is, what we do during the workshop is we'll tell them the truth. We're not going to applaud someone into a direction that we think doesn't make sense. So that's what we do, and that's sometimes, of course, pretty hard. My name Nagtegaal stands for Nightingale, and then we got David, whose last name is Crow, and that's the way we sing a bit, right?
So in that 3-day workshop, you are mostly focused on discovering the pain.
Let me explain a bit. Do I have time for that? And explain how we do it. So the idea about the workshop and what we accomplish there is we try to give the participants a tool and a notion of how to build and articulate a business case, as I call it. So making the case for your business. And we do it, again, simple guy, on the basis of 4 simple questions. Do customers need and want my product? Is there a market? Is it big enough? Is it ready to pay now or later? Do customers want to buy it from me? And can I deliver? And if you got 4 positive answers on that, you probably have a business case. And then we talk about valuation, and we talk about realization. So then you get the investment part, and an investment case is basically a good business case with a good price and an opportunity and a possibility to exit. Now, when looking at those four elements, those four questions, valuation, market, positioning, and execution, there's this one thing in the middle. It's the black box, and it's called pain. And pain stands for the problem that you're solving, the problem that your customers have, and that you have the best solution for. And what we've found is that sometimes it seems very obvious what the problem is, but then if you dig deeper, it is never super obvious. And of course, it requires you to come up with a really good description and definition who your customers are. Because the better you understand your customers, the clearer it becomes what the problem is that you're going to solve for them. And so what we've learned in doing the workshops, and also using the same methodology with customers outside the workshop, moving on, is that understanding the pain is not trivial. And it's of course changing because the environment of your customers is changing, and as a result, elements that either determine the pain or a part of the pain will change as well. It never stops, and it may be a different pain in this part of the country and that part of the country, this country or that country. So as a result, we spend a lot of time indeed on the pain, and we'll take it from there.
Okay, so you mostly discover the pain, or you, after that you also address that and do something about it? Because I remember you also plan to follow up with companies on how they perform. I don't know if you're doing that now, but a few weeks after your workshop or some period of time, you plan to follow up with them and see how they execute.
Yeah. We touch upon execution lightly during the workshop because it's a big chunk. So within a couple of weeks after the workshop, I do a one-day workshop on execution and what I call the execution table, which is basically a combined cash flow and workflow statement, activity planner. And then participants go home and they start working on it, and I'll spend another day and probably another day with them working through stuff, and most of the time that's not enough, so they keep calling me afterwards, and I'm actually proud of that because of the well over 100, almost 120 companies that went through the workshop. David and I are in regular contact with at least half of them. They call us with questions, and we follow up, and that's what we're doing. Yeah. So, and we see that people come to different conclusions with regards of the original pain.
So I found an interesting definition of pain, of monetizable pain. Pain is so significant that customers will return the cold calls of an unknown startup to hear more about how to solve it. And they also say that if customers don't return your cold calls, then either you have phrased the pain wrong, and you are going after a wrong customer, or you don't have a monetizable pain. Do you think that's true? And how do you define pain? Do you have any sentence or anything how you describe it?
Because it's a never-ending journey searching for it. We say, okay, start with trying to explain it in 5 bullet points. We use a little tool called FaceMap, and FaceMap is about different elements of your business case, and you fill in the FaceMap using 5 bullet points per element, and you cannot do more than 140 characters per bullet point, so you have to be precise. And that's where the journey starts. All of a sudden it becomes difficult because if you start writing, you can come up with a long, fluffy story. If you do 5 bullet points, you have to be precise. That's where a lot of people get into trouble the first night, and then we work through the pain points of all the companies the next morning, and that's
You don't cry there yet.
No. The crying is on Saturday.
Okay.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, the crying is. That's when we have discussed the pain, and then on Saturday morning, all 6 companies. We always do it with 6 companies. They present their business case up to the level of pain, value proposition in the market, which is basically the opportunity of your business case. And on average, 1 company per workshop during that presentation has to basically come to the conclusion that they don't have a business case. There's no opportunity, which is tough because they worked hard on it, and sometimes that leads to tears. And we don't shy away from that. We're not paying any lip service there.
And are you looking at the team at all during your workshop, or you're only focusing on the business? Because the team is part of the business, so I thought maybe you have other elements in the workshop where you can say, okay guys, your team cannot work, or give some input not only on the pain, but also on other elements of the business.
Okay. Wow, I didn't see that one coming, but the workshop, I would say the 6 companies in the workshop, preferably each company is presented by 2 people. And the concept is like this. If you don't present, you listen to the one who is presenting as if you were an investor. So you're going to tell me your pain, and because I'm going to invest, I really need to understand your pain. So I'm asking you questions, but what do you mean with that, and this and that? So there's within the first evening already, there's big group dynamics going on. We stay away from any judgment with regards to teams, because don't give me those eyes, Chris. We're not going to tell, we sometimes tell, well, you're missing something. Because sometimes it's obvious if you start a company and you're 2 MBA students and you're going to build a software company, guess what's missing? Oh, you're going to outsource that. Well, good luck. Okay. Those kind of things, yes, we'll say. But we're not in a position to say after 2 days, well, guys, you better split up because you don't match well. I mean, I'm not a psychologist, and so I don't feel competent to say that. So we don't do that. But what happens during those sessions is that teams themselves figure out that they're not a good team, and the other thing has happened as well. We've had a team, 3 guys coming in, and at the end of the weekend, they said, "Well, clearly our ideas suck, but we're gonna do something else because we've learned to be a team in this thing," and that was great as well, of course. Right?
And you personally, when you see a team or an entrepreneur, there's a concept of sponge versus rock. So when you have a sponge, it's not coming from that industry, like Travis from Oleg, right? He never was a taxi driver. He never was in that industry. So he came there, he sunk everything in, and then after learning everything, he wrung everything out like a sponge. So and there might be some professional who's 30 years in the industry, and who is coming and saying, "Hey, I have this improvement for X, and I can do better, faster, cheaper." So what do you prefer? What do you believe in more? Or you don't have any preference?
I don't. No, it's about whether you come to the right to the right solution for a clear problem from the left side or the right side. I don't care, as long as you come to the right conclusion. It's that same old discussion whether a venture capitalist should have been an entrepreneur or not. Some entrepreneurs make very good venture capitalists, and others make lousy venture capitalists. And people who were not entrepreneurs, some lousy venture capitalists, some very good, very good. Because the one, it's about the sponging and being the rock. I mean, I don't think you can clearly say the one is better than the other. It's just how good are you, and how well do you use your talents. It can be different talents that lead to a certain success, right?
And whether it's a sponge or a rock, do you see any common mistakes, or when there is no business? So is it mostly problem with the idea, or with experience, or what do you usually see when people go through a workshop?
In what we see during the workshop is mostly people have thought through their product or service quite well. The concept of really digging into the pain is new and hard for them. Market studies are mostly done quite well. What we see far too often is that people underestimate what needs to be done. So when it comes to execution, very often they don't have a clue. Haven't thought through what needs to happen, and they're not really prepared to do that. And then I say, yet. Hopefully they will, but yet. That's where we developed this execution table, which is more of a concept than a product. It's basically what we do is, okay, we start with the top line, that's money coming in. So define the number of customers for the next 24 months and the money flowing in from those customers. And then there's other money coming in from investors and that kind of stuff. So you work that out, and then we say no money comes in without doing something. So stuff needs to be done, and needs to be done in a certain time frame in order to get the money in a certain time frame. So write down all the things that need to be done in the different departments of your little organization that lead to the money flowing in. Now, all those activities require an organization. The organization costs money, and it's the money flowing out. It's very simple, and it's just a cash flow statement and forecast with something in the middle. And that something in the middle is what nobody does, of course, because first of all, cash flow, that's for accountants. Well, accountants don't have a clue about what needs to be done in order to get the money in. So that's where things go wrong. However, tying activities to the monies flowing in and out is an enormous amount of work. It's tedious. You have to, and they say, oh no, I have to go back, and then you start working, and it turns out to be different. And basically, that's what it's all about. A plan is a set of targets and a set of assumptions, and execution is trying to achieve the targets and test and evaluate the assumptions, and then adjust. But that's not what you have in mind when you want to conquer the world. You want to sell, go for it, and not. It was funny. A guy, engineer, typical engineer thing, and I worked the whole thing out. He said, Toon, but if I keep this thing up to date, it's going to cost me half a day per week. And I say, yeah, that's called management. There we go. Half a day per week management. Yeah, okay. Oh, he said, okay, that makes sense. So he did it.
Okay. And, you know, engineers are separate nation. So,
Really?
Yeah. Speaking about them, it can take us a whole day. So, if we...
Any engineers here? I know. Look, there we go.
No, I think I'm also coming. I'm not an engineer, but I'm also technical. So, sometimes I...
That's not the same thing, right?
I'm still a nerd.
I just got a aluminum ring on your finger. That's not
I just was trying to direct that question towards difference in nations, because I know you invested, or at least you flew to Israel in 2000 to invest in 4 companies, right? To review 4 companies. So,
We invested, yeah. In total, I invested in 3 in Israel, yeah.
Okay. So I hope they did well. It was, the millennium.
Yeah.
So, what are the differences in cultures between here and there? Maybe something that you saw there and we can bring here, something that is missing.
Israel versus Canada, or Israel versus Holland, or other parts of Europe?
Nova Scotia, I would say.
Oh, Israel versus Nova Scotia.
Do they have a
Let me. Okay. So I became a Canadian half a year ago. So yeah. So I got this big letter from Mr. Harper, and it said at the end, "Toon." So it means that direct is rude as of now, right? So I'll try and be polite. No, the thing is, I think Israeli entrepreneurs, compare them to entrepreneurs anywhere in the world. I think they're extremely knowledgeable. They're extremely passionate. There is a big number of them. In order to succeed there, you have to be darn good. And they're extremely well informed about stuff. They have an extremely good environment, a startup ecosystem that's very supportive and very, very professional. Probably the best in the world. And you may think that sounds weird because the best in the world is Silicon Valley. I think if on a entrepreneur per capita basis, Israel is far stronger. So now you're asking me, okay, compare the best of the world to Nova Scotia. Nova Scotia is doing fine. No, listen, we have to play some catch up, but not just here. Not just here. And we're making progress. Our ecosystem is getting better, and our entrepreneurs are getting more knowledgeable, more aggressive, and they are more planted in the world than 10 years ago. I hope some of you can agree with me, because that's my observation. And I say this as a Dutchman, not as a Canadian, okay?
There are a few folks here from Europe. I think I saw. Yeah. Oh, hi.
Kelly's here.
Yeah. So I know that Europe plans to go to Israel and establish some partnership with Israel there.
There is. So there's a formal relationship that's established between the government of Nova Scotia and Israel, and Innovacorp is going to help kind of lead that to help the startup community.
Right.
And if anybody's interested, I think they're trying to do a trade mission. So if there's any companies here that might be interested, grab me during the networking, and I'll put your name down on the list. It doesn't guarantee anything, but they're looking for some kind of companies that will do trade.
Okay. I think that might be a good direction. I met actually a guy, I know him pretty well. He's working with the Embassy of Netherlands in Israel. And what he works on, he tries to get those companies to Netherlands and offering them different programs and different grants and whatever Netherlands has to offer.
Mm-hmm.
So if I think we have some presence there and can somehow take companies here, that will only contribute to the overall.
I agree. I think Nova Scotia is a wonderful basis for European and Israeli companies to expand into North America, at least the East Coast.
So
It's 1 hour closer. 1 hour helps, and you're here, so there we go.
I have a couple of brief questions for the wrap-up, but before I would like to...
Are we done already? Wow.
You made it quick, so...
Oh boy.
I had
Do you need to know more?
So I would like to open that for questions from the audience if someone wants to open that. Go ahead. Guy.
What do you say about Israel? Just curiosity. The difference between the culture in regards to failure. I find that here failure is more risky. People are afraid to fail because it's put a sticker on you. In Israel, it's not endorsed, but it's definitely not condemned. And I think that the less fear you have from failure, more entrepreneurs jumping into the pile because the risk is low.
Yeah, but so that's true. The thing though is, I think that's changing as well, rapidly over here. I mean, we see every year more and more entrepreneurs starting, or maybe we should call them would-be entrepreneurs. It's all fine. So more people take the jump. As a result, we will have more failures, which is the odds, and it is in a way okay. It's also about how you fail, whether you run your company into the ground where you should have known better. Could you avoid things? But when you try something out, you fail. There's a chance of that. And we had a long discussion about failure this morning, and that was interesting. It's unavoidable. It's about knowing, is the risk getting too much? Can I solve it? If not, what do I do? And be transparent about it. I think where you will get a mark is so a negative one if you let investors in the dark until the very last moment that you're running your company into the ground, where it's important that you're transparent, that they know if this order is not coming in next month, that you will run out of money the 2 months after that. So they have an option to say, well, we're going to fix that or not. Or when you work out your plan and it turns out that your assumptions were not correct, which of course happens all the time. The one and only thing you can be sure of with regards to a plan, it won't come true. And it means that not all your assumptions were right, and everybody understands that. So now it comes to the point where, okay, the original assumptions were, not all of them were right. Can I change my plan? Can I adjust it? Can I adjust it in time? Does it need extra money? Do I feel comfortable raising more money on the basis of new adjustments? Do I have time enough? And it's also the responsibility of investors to make sure that transparency is there and that they get the information and force the entrepreneur to come up with the information and do this this play of testing assumptions while trying to achieve your targets. It should be part of that entrepreneurial culture. That part is not there yet, I think. The continuous analysis of assumptions and reality.
I agree. I think that you can fail within the company without closing the company. But you can fail with your assumptions just in directions, so it's okay. So when you close a company, it's still okay because in larger scale, you're still on your way to success. So
I agree. And sometimes, stuff is unavoidable. Companies fail for tons of reasons, but what's still happening is that too little money is invested too late, and that's the most potent recipe for failure, of course. And that's because you can't control the fundraising process completely by yourself, and that's where good investors distinguish themselves from bad investors, of course. That they make sure that they don't invest too little, too late. If they're later on, they have to probably invest more because things have changed in the meanwhile. You want stories about venture capitalists not knowing what they're doing? It's the funniest thing. It's, I was one of those guys, right? So don't worry about it. In 1997, the European Venture Capital Association was 15 years old, and we would do two big events, one spring seminar and one annual symposium. And the spring seminar that year, we said, okay, we're 15 years old. It's time we talk about our failures as venture capitalists. Well, that was a total new concept because venture capitalists never make mistakes, right? They're the wisest and all that stuff. So okay, I got the plan through. So we had a lot of research done by one of the big firms, and the morning was all about the research that was done, backgrounds and statistics and all that kind of stuff. And in the afternoon, we had split the group, and there were only senior guys, partners, because you don't want to discuss your failures with a junior from the competition. You don't do that. That's one bridge too far, right? And so we split the group in early stage buyouts and developments. Let's say Series A, B, and I was chairing the group of development capital, Series A and B, and was a crowd like this, 30, 40 people, all senior venture capitalists. And in order to get the discussion going, I said, I had this first slide, and I said, in 25% of the failures, it's the venture capitalists to blame. So what do you think the answer was to the group?
Hey, where's the rope?
So they said bang on?
No, where's the rope? We hang the guy that said that.
Oh, that's me.
There's no way that they're
So that you think they didn't agree, right? Who think they were agreeing? Who thought they would not agree? Yeah, you heard the story. The weird thing was that a guy stood up and said, don't make it 50%. So venture capitalists said, if 50% of the case, it's us to blame that the company goes down the drain. So we don't do our job well. And so the thing, it's not a guarantee for success. You get venture capital in. The stats say differently as well, right? In North America, about 50% of the companies, startups, will not survive year 4. And VC-funded startups It's, I think, 50% or more. So it doesn't matter whether you get VC or not. half of the guys will fail. So it's a weird thing, and you have to understand why that could happen. We talk about that in the workshop as well, by the way. Yeah. Yeah.
Success after 10 years can be defined differently as well. Success after 10 years if they're still in business.
Oh, there you go. So there can be definitely success for a venture capitalist means that he makes the company contributes to the overall performance of the fund well enough. So you need to make at least 30% per year on an investment to call it a successful investment, at least. Chris, would you agree?
Well, again,
Compounded.
you know,
Depends on what your exit strategy
the
is.
problem is a number like that gets thrown out
That's it.
because they use averages.
There you go.
You need those
Right.
stellar winners
Right.
to make it average.
Right.
So,
But if you just get your money and 10%, that's not a successful investment for a venture capitalist. It can be okay for an entrepreneur and his family.
Yeah, just wondering, sort of as far as the startup ecosystem goes, where do you see the gaps? Like, where can we as a collective kind of focus on a bit, and compared to other ecosystems that you've seen, what are we missing? What can we do to kind of build up?
Where we need to get better here is we need to get more angel investors to the scene, and as some of you know, I tried last year. It didn't work out too well for a bunch of let's say external reasons, had nothing to do with the ecosystem. So Rob and I are going to start trying again after the summer to get more angel investors, potential angel investors attracted to the scene, make them aware of what's going on and how they could reach out and how they could be reached by early stage companies in time, so that early stage companies have an audience to pitch for and start investor relations. That part is lacking, I think. You know, of course, we all say access to capital is lacking. The thing, though, is we're basically a town, right? So how many venture capital companies can you have on 1.7 or 2.4 million people? You can't have too many. So we need to make sure that they come and fish here as well. That part we may not do too well yet, but we'll see.
Is there anything besides money that we can do to kind of build up?
Well, the thing is, if money is available, there are strings attached to the money. So the money will only be available to companies that really understand what they're doing. So it's this thing. The access to capital will create better companies. Better companies will bring in money, and we're building and we're starting to do that. Go ahead.
Good one. Seems like that the last 3 years here is all about focusing about high tech and biotech, technology and internet. It seems like we forgot about the bricks and mortars businesses that can do really well. Yes, they're not going to do the multiple that the VC want to see on the high tech and Twitter or Google, but very fair return of investment for the medium-sized risk and medium-sized reward as well. It seems that the Nova Scotia's lack of investment in that regard as well, at least in the last 2 years, from the angel hype investment.
That could be. I don't know. In general, of course, it is tech companies that potentially bring the return that venture capitalists are seeking. It's the game they play. It's okay, out of 10 investments, I need to have 3 who basically bring me all the return. Then 2 to 3 who are doing okay, they don't fail, and then 4 or less that completely fail. Well, those 3 that are winners need to bring a return on investment for the complete portfolio, for the fund, of 20% and more in order to become a successful venture capital company. So that brings you to companies that one way or another are going to be exited within 4 or 5 years for 4 or 5 times the money you invested into it. And there are very little brick and mortar companies that can do that because
there's a space for it. For investment in companies that are not ITech. Yes,
yeah, but the thing is, the problem with it is the opportunity to exit those investments are very limited for brick and mortar companies. Who do you sell that company to? And there may be 1 or 2 candidates, but that is scary. To build a company and you put a lot of money in, and you need 4 or 5 times your money back in order to have a successful venture capital investment, and it's hard to find trends up front to position your company towards to. So that's it. So that's why venture capital companies really look into private equity ones can play a different game, but then we're talking financial engineering and doing very smart things, and we all want to do smart things. I know, but with financial engineering, and but then you need big companies in order to do good private equity.
Private equity are looking for 3x, but they're really looking for the versus venture capital fund, which is ready for mistakes and losing that money. So I think they're more likely to kill the company or
but getting 3x is still requires a good view on who is going to pay 3x, and if you have only 1 or 2 possible candidates for them, and it's based upon not based upon trends in markets that you can tie your investment to, then it becomes scary. And especially with smaller companies that don't have a dominant market position, apart from in their local market, then basically you're gambling on being able to sell that company that has a dominant market position in, let's say, Atlantic Canada, to a company that is looking to expand into Atlantic Canada. Well, now you got a little pond to fish in, and that's scary, right? Gregor.
So, just following up on that, you've got an ecosystem that is focused more and more on the tech startup, where the goal is that 3x return. Don't you risk creating a startup bubble if this jurisdiction, that jurisdiction, we got Windsor, we got Halifax, we got St. John, we got Fredericton, we got St. John's, Newfoundland, we're creating all these little bubbles of startup. Are we
Well, Gregor, let me put it this way: if we here in Atlantic Canada are going to be able to create a startup bubble, then we're doing well. When it comes to bubbles, that will happen every 10 years or so. crap, I'm old, as you know. But what I've seen in those 30 years, I mean, it takes every 10 years something nasty happens. And what I've learned is that the bigger the money, the shorter the memory. Apparently, I mean, we make the same mistakes, it's just packaged a little differently. We're doing exactly the same stupid thing every 10 years.
To your point, we have had some success in this region, and there has been discussion about not creating a territory fight between New Brunswick and Nova Scotia. I mean, the Propel Group and the work Jerry Klein's been doing, and the success stories. I mean, the early success of companies like Info Interactive, who sold out to American Online, to the ones we're more familiar with more recently, the Radiant 6 group. What I've found is those organizations have nurtured entrepreneurs within those organizations. So many of those individuals that were involved in those companies were now entrepreneurs on their own rights in their own areas.
Correct.
And so you have to build on that and recognize that one of the values is for those guys not to forget their history, right? Because there's early startup companies now that have great ideas, need to be coached, and need to be given some guidance on how to get into that market, and in some cases just need a break, right? So we're growing that. I honestly think we're growing that as a economy. And you know, I liken the investment environment here to a stream bed that's relatively dry, and there's more and more water coming down. And certainly if you only have 2 or 3 investment opportunities, they call the shots. Right? As an early entrepreneur, you start giving away equity in your company very, very early. And I don't know how detrimental that is in the long run for the growth of entrepreneurs. Maybe comment on that.
Yeah. To the companies that come to the workshop, I always say, you know, there are no venture capitalists without entrepreneurs. They can't. There's no job for venture capitalists without entrepreneurs. Actually, there are a lot of entrepreneurs without venture capital. So, entrepreneurs and venture capitalists should be more aware of the fact that they are the yin and yang of prosperity, and they need each other. And an entrepreneur should be fully aware of the fact that that the venture capitalists need him or her as badly as the other way around. But the thing is, we're all humans. So if the competition is less, guess what? You can get better prices, right? If we're good and we advertise ourselves, the competition will increase. People will come from outside. Oh, those are good companies. And what we need to do here is encourage good entrepreneurs with good plans and pitches to go outside and take the plane and sell their story, not just in Atlantic Canada, but go outside as well. And if your story is good enough, you'll get financed. If it's good enough, and proof has been given, it's there. And you know, if we can only grow little companies that can be financed only here, oh, that's not good, right? It helps a lot if we get more sources involved. It doesn't have to be all located here, but more sources involved. But it's this thing. Good companies. When I tried to set up a fund in 05, 06, I mean, I did this long journey, meeting with all the institutions that did invest in venture capital in Canada, and that was a sobering thing, right? It was my third year in Canada, and I would sit in meetings, and people would start laughing at me and said, "Toon," he said, "you know, venture capital in Nova Scotia, Nova Scotia, that's where you retire. People don't work there. And people would actually say, do they read and write over there? That was tough. That was not fun, right? But at the end of the day, I got two funds, two institutions that I got first along with, apart from one institution here who basically said, well, we're in for 25%. But it was Hospital Ontario Pension Plan and TD Capital. That basically said, this is a good plan, and you got the right background and all that kind of stuff. But at the end of the day, we haven't seen enough good companies coming out of the region to justify a fund. Well, we're how many? 10 years further down the road. There are far more examples of successes. We need to keep that thing rolling and doing that. And I think we're doing that. Internally, within the region, we may need to be somewhat clearer with companies that are not good enough, and just tell them you're not good enough. And I mean, we should applaud every initiative, but not necessarily every company that started, because some of them are just not good enough. And we should tell them, hey, you're not good enough. It's not going to work. This is missing, and this is missing, this is missing. And your assumptions, they are clearly not correct. And sometimes it's very obvious from a mile distance, right? And then we should be clear, because it says, we need to be friends, right? That's one of the things you've said there.
So to wrap up, I have four just hyper-style questions. Just briefly, 3 words, answer them. What 3 words would David choose to describe?
What words?
Yeah. Just how would you tag yours? How would he tag you?
How would David describe me in a couple of words? Oh, my gosh. He would probably say he's my friend. He's Dutch. He's weird.
When an entrepreneur can consider him or herself successful?
When he or she has accomplished what he or she wanted to accomplish.
But it never ends.
No, will never end.
So, never. Okay.
Well, no, of course, no, that's not true. If your goal is to start a company to get products to the market, to have a big adoption rate of your product, and people are really benefiting from it, you've accomplished something. Now, if you can do that in such a way that you make money and the people who invest in you make money, then that's clearly success. Wouldn't you say so? And then you go on, because you will, that tastes after more, right?
As an entrepreneur, I see myself like a donkey with a carrot. So I'm never satisfied. So after each goal, I just chase the carrot which is in front of me. So,
Oh boy.
I'm never satisfied, and that's what maybe I'm like. And one book which you would recommend to every entrepreneur must read?
You didn't ask me this. Now I need to think about which book would I recommend. It would be a novel. It would be, I guess it would be Night Train to Lisbon.
Okay. Why?
Because it's about someone who reads basically a short story in which someone else explains his feelings and his view on the world so precisely and so felt through that he gets completely obsessed with who wrote that and tries and find that out, and is basically forgetting everything in order to find it out. And because he's doing that, he reinvents his own life.
And the best advice you would give entrepreneur. So one message which you would like entrepreneurs here to take with them today.
Think through your execution. Think through your execution stage.
So I'd like to thank Toon Nagtegaal for joining us today. Thank you so much.
It was a pleasure. Thank you very much.